You probably have a box of cereal in your kitchen right now. Cheerios, corn flakes, some granola with a picture of mountains on the packet. You eat it most mornings without thinking about it. It's just breakfast. But here's what the box doesn't tell you. Cereal was invented to stop people from having sex. This is not a metaphor. This is the actual origin story of breakfast cereal. And once you know it, you will never look at a bowl of cornflakes the same way again. But before we get to that, let's answer the actual question. Because for most of human history, breakfast looked nothing like what you have now. And in many cases, breakfast as a separate meal didn't even exist. For ancient humans, the hunter-gatherer variety, there was no meal schedule. You ate when food was available. The idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner as three distinct, obligatory meals is surprisingly recent. For most of our evolutionary history, you might eat once a day or twice, or not at all, depending entirely on what you caught or gathered. The concept of eating first thing in the morning as a daily ritual simply didn't exist. When humans settled into agricultural communities and food became more predictable, meal patterns emerged. But even then, breakfast was not what we'd recognize. In ancient Egypt, the standard morning meal for a worker was bread and beer. Not the crisp, cold beer of a modern fridge, a thick, sour, porridge-like fermented drink closer to liquid bread. Low alcohol, high calories, deeply nutritious. Children drank it. Pregnant women drank it. It was the ancient world's equivalent of a nutritional supplement. The Egyptians made multiple varieties, and it was consumed at every meal, breakfast included. In ancient Rome, the morning meal, the ientaculum, was usually bread dipped in olive oil, sometimes with cheese, olives, or a few dates. The wealthy might have eggs. If you were a Roman soldier on campaign, it was hard bread called bucellatum and whatever you could find. Romans didn't particularly value breakfast as a meal. Most of their social eating happened in the evening, at the cena, which could last for hours. In medieval Europe, the church actually discouraged eating in the morning. To eat before attending morning mass was considered gluttony. The more devout you were, the longer you waited. Laborers and peasants largely ignored this. You cannot dig fields on an empty stomach. But the elite took pride in delaying their first meal. Breakfast was slightly suspect morally. When they did eat in the morning, medieval Europeans had pottage, a thick, slow-cooked stew made of whatever grains, vegetables, and occasional scraps of meat were available. Not much different from what had been eaten for thousands of years. Warm, filling. Barely seasoned. The rich had more options. Cold meats from the previous evening's supper. Roasted birds. Bread and ale. Henry Roman VIII reportedly favored a morning meal of beef and beer. The contrast with a bowl of low-fat bran flakes could not be more dramatic. So when did the modern breakfast emerge? And where does cereal fit in? The answer is the Victorian era, and a particular moral panic about the human body. By the 1800s, the typical Western breakfast for anyone who could afford it had become extremely heavy. Bacon, eggs, chops, kidneys, sausages, kippers, toast, butter, marmalade, the full English, more or less. The industrial middle class had money and food, and they ate accordingly. But in America, a new movement was taking hold. The temperance movement, the health reform movement, and a specific strand of Protestant theology had merged into a single alarming idea. That meat, rich food, spices, and alcohol inflamed the body's animal passions. And inflamed passions led to, the reformers were quite specific about this, masturbation. John Harvey Kellogg was a physician, a Seventh-day Adventist, and a man of almost nuclear moral conviction. He ran the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan, which treated patients with a program of vegetarian food, exercise, fresh air, and cold water enemas administered multiple times per day. He believed firmly that bland, simple food would reduce sexual urges, improve health, and bring the body under proper spiritual control. In 1894, he was preparing a batch of wheat dough for patients when he was called away. When he returned, the dough had dried out. He ran it through rollers anyway, and instead of a sheet, it broke into flakes. He toasted them. The patients loved them. Cornflakes, or their wheat precursor, were born. His brother will saw a business opportunity. He added sugar, which John furiously opposed. They fell out permanently over it. Will started the Kellogg Company, and the rest is history. The sanitarium attracted other entrepreneurs. A former patient named C.W. Post started his own company. Grape nuts appeared in 1897. The Battle Creek Health Movement generated dozens of copycat products. Breakfast cereal, bland, prepackaged, aggressively marketed as healthy, flooded the American market. The marketing slowly dropped the anti-masturbation angle. Families were told cereal was modern, scientific, efficient. You didn't need to cook. You just poured from a box. It was perfect for the industrial age, fast, standardized, convenient. By the early 20th century, it had become the default American breakfast, and from there spread across the world. So the next time you pour yourself a bowl and add the milk, consider what you're eating. Not just processed grain, but the legacy of a Victorian moral panic, a family business feud, and one man's absolute conviction that breakfast could save your soul. The Egyptians had liquid bread. The Romans had olive oil and olives. The medieval poor had slow-cooked stew. And we got cornflakes. History has a sense of humor.